Right now at 5, the nation's tariff turmoil taking another step forward.
They should have been preparing to give people their money back if this were illegal.
How lawmakers and the president are responding to the Supreme Court's ruling. Plus, a new tragedy striking a Beaverton family after their loved one was deported. And why state researchers say lawmakers need to act fast to protect a firefighting resource.
There's really no other coverage in terms of visual detection.
We're going to start things off tonight by taking a live look out over the Rose City, where we've seen some wet weather throughout the day today, but peaks of sunshine right now. But here are some shots of Highway 26 near Government Camp. While it was briefly shut down earlier today because of snow, the road has since reopened, but ODOT says there have been crashes in the area there. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri joining us with your first forecast. Hey, Joe.
Hey, John. Yeah, we're going to be continuing to see the snow pile up here over the next few hours or so. A winter weather advisory is in effect until later on this evening throughout the Washington and Oregon Cascades, but no advisories throughout the west side of the state. So along Highway 26, you are going to be seeing some slick roads. Of course, that advisory it also encompasses the foothills of the mountain, so be prepared for that. Of course, it's been looking like winter most of this last week, and that's going to continue tonight. Here's a live look now from our Timberline Lodge camera. We're looking at a temperature of 26 degrees, and the snowfall amounts over the last 24 hours really impressive. Close to a foot of snow outside Timberline Lodge. Mount Hood Meadows, you've seen about 8 inches. Ski Bowl 3. And Mount Bachelor 3 as well. Of course, you're wondering how come Mount Bachelor didn't see a whole lot. Yeah, most of this system has been bringing in most of the precipitation throughout the northern and central, or I should say the northern and Washington Cascades. But here's another round that's going to be moving through heading into tomorrow with some heavy rain a good portion of the day. And then we'll be seeing an atmospheric river move through the Pacific Northwest late tonight and tomorrow night, or I'd rather, and into tomorrow. Check out this brave soul. Hitting the surf. Not a whole lot of waves out there right now, but that ocean temperature right now is a balmy 53 degrees. So hopefully he has a full wetsuit. Looks like he does, at least on his upper body. But regardless, I'll talk more about your detailed forecast in just a few minutes.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. President Trump says he has upped his global tariff to 15%. That's up from the 10% he threatened yesterday. Now, this comes in response to the U.S. Supreme Court striking down his previous far-reaching global tariffs on Friday. The majority found that it's unconstitutional for the president to unilaterally set and change tariffs because taxation powers belong to Congress.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing.
The new tariffs come under a law that restricts them to 150 days. Oregon Democratic Congresswoman Janelle Bynum is pushing legislation that would require Customs and Border Protection to quickly refund tariffs to businesses out of its own budget. She says the Relief Act would level the playing field for large and small businesses, since many small companies aren't able to afford expensive litigation like larger corporations to recoup their losses. Bynum says the government knows how to take money quickly, so it ought to give it back quickly.
Is that small businesses have passed some of these costs on to consumers. They've eaten their own profits, or they've held off on making investments in their business, whether it's equipment or in human capital.
Bynum says the Relief Act would cut out the long application process for businesses and require refunds from the feds within 90 days of enactment. President Trump has said striking down his tariffs would be an economic body blow to the country. A difficult update from a Beaverton family whose father was deported after more than 30 years in the U.S. Paulino Martin's son telling KGW his dad died this past week in Mexico. Alma McCarty spoke with him just days after the family said goodbye.
He was always an active dad. He loved animals.
Eric Martin San Juan flips through the many memories, time spent with his father, Paulino.
We were able to let him have fun. Took him on vacations to Seattle.
These pictures now more precious, recalling his dad's generosity.
Just how much love he gave us, how much time he gave us, how present he was. My dad told me at a very young age that we don't have a lot of money, so I might not be able to get you everything. But my dad gave me everything.
On Monday, far from his Beaverton home and at only 53 years old, Paulino Martin passed away. He'd been sick for a month, battling pneumonia.
But I do think everything correlates from him being taken and being broken down so much that his body couldn't take it anymore.
On a weekday in late November, Eric says his dad had just finished work at a job site when federal agents pulled him over. He spent only 3 days in ICE custody, first in Tacoma, then in Arizona, before he was deported to Mexico.
They threw my dad out like an animal. And now I have no dad. I don't want to say I hate our administration, but I want to say that y'all are making it really hard for me to love my country.
This week, Eric and his family laid their father to rest. The whole town, he says, honoring Paulino with the send-off he deserved.
Me and my brother designed a half Mexican, half American flag. When we buried my father, we laid it on top of him. He spent the majority of his life here in the United States. As much as anybody wants to say otherwise, but my dad was as American as you can get.
Alma McCarty, KGW News.
New tonight out of Hillsborough, a driver now facing charges for a crash that killed one person and seriously hurt another. It happened around 8:45 the night of February 10th near Northeast Ronler Drive and Century Boulevard. The Hillsborough Police Department says 19-year-old Oscar Regis was speeding when his car hit a light pole. He tried to run from the scene, but officers caught him. He's now been indicted on manslaughter and assault and other charges. In Milwaukee, police are asking the public for more information after an Amtrak train smashed into an abandoned car last night. It happened just after 6:30 at the intersection of Southeast Harrison and Railroad Avenue. Officers found a black Ford Mustang that had been pushed off the rails and crashed into a parked car. The Amtrak was damaged but was able to keep going. Researchers at the University of Oregon say the risk of wildfires is going up. Unless they receive funding from the state soon, they could lose dozens of cameras that monitor wildfires statewide. Our Thomas Schultz is joining us now. Thomas, how are lawmakers reacting to the news?
Yeah, well, John, once they started to understand the scope of what they were hearing at a meeting on Friday, lawmakers quickly became alarmed as they learned Oregon is moving in the wrong direction when it comes to wildfire safety.
Good morning. I'm opening this meeting of the Joint Committee on Information Management and Technology.
Friday, it didn't take long to turn a sleepy Salem committee meeting into one filled with shocked lawmakers.
To me, this is alarming.
As representatives like Nancy Nathanson learned the state is woefully short on cameras surveilling wildfires. Experts say funding for cameras is dropping, while the risk of wildfires is going way up.
We're seeing, below 50% of the median sort of snowpack levels, and there's signs of concern about this coming fire season.
Leland O'Driscoll runs the University of Oregon's Hazards Lab, which is at risk of losing 33 cameras unless the state can scrabble together at least $2 million this short legislative session.
That's sort of our bottom line. That kind of keeps the lights on through this fire season and next.
The Hazards Lab monitors 180 cameras to track wildfires, though ideally, O'Driscoll says he'd like to see 500 cameras statewide.
They're quite essential.
He says one camera can cost tens of thousands of dollars to operate, though the Oregon Department of Forestry says it can make a big difference, and in the long run, save lives and money.
That really just resolves to preventing a small fire from becoming large, and then ultimately potentially saving thousands, if not millions of dollars.
Giving lawmakers yet another big decision to make this legislative session.
This is one of our chief areas of responsibility, public safety.
And many of those cameras at risk are in Western Oregon. O'Driscoll says if they don't get state funding, those 33 cameras would go offline before this year's fire season even begins. Now, Oregon Senate Democrats say they plan to share more plans for the state budget sometime next week. John.
Thomas, thanks so much for your reporting with fire season right around the corner. Well, it was already chilly enough outside at Willamette Park when hundreds of people jumped into the freezing river for Special Olympic Oregon's polar plunge. Since Friday, people were plunging every hour for 24 straight hours. Then at 11 a.m., the community was invited to take part in a super plunge after raising at least $60 each. All of that money supports roughly 5,000 athletes across the state with what they need to participate in the games throughout their entire life. Now that includes transportation, food, coaching, venues, even uniforms.
The Polar Plunge is our biggest fundraiser of the year to help fuel 3 seasons of sport for thousands of athletes across the state.
Having IDD, it is hard to find a place that we fit in. So Special Olympics Oregon gives us that community.
Portland is one of 6 cities where the nonprofit has hosted plunges with the goal of raising $563,000. So far, they've raised more than $400,000. The next stop in Bend on February 28th.